this is what I wanted, right? And so I can't sit here and go, oh my God, the Bruins are terrible. They've lost 4 in a row. They do not look like the same team that surprised us all the day after the deadline, winning in Tampa Bay and then having their best win of the season a few days later against Florida. They are bad. They are a flawed team that does not generate enough and does not defend well enough. They're missing their top 2 defensemen, all of that. But beyond all of that, for about 2 months here, I was sitting here pounding the table, screaming, just sell. You don't have it. It's a good market. Sell. Well, this is what selling looks like, guys. This is what it looks like when you have a team that sells at the deadline. They trade their captain. They trade what was effectively their number 1 defenseman by, default with Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy being out. They trade Brandon Carlo. They trade Charlie Coyle, who's a middle 6 fixture for the team. And so here we are. This is what a selling team looks like post-deadline. And so I can't get mad about it. I can sit here, though, and say, okay, now it's time to pivot. It's time to pivot here. You have been on the worst stretch, by the way. Kyle behind the glass producing today. Hello, Kyle. Thank you for being with us. I know this is if you're listening and you're taking part in this, you're a P1. Because this team is woof. If you could do anything else with your time, I got a feeling you probably would, compared to watching them at midnight, losing 5-1 to the Vegas Golden Knights. But their last 19 games, they have just 5 wins. This is their worst stretch in a 19-game segment since 2005-2006, which, if you remember, they traded Joe Thornton, they traded Sergei Samsonov. They basically reset the deck in that year as well. So, fittingly, it's the worst stretch they've been on in 19 years. And so, this is what happens, right? But when they left for Vegas on Tuesday afternoon after practice, talking to Joe Sacco after practice, he said, we still have a chance. We just got to go on a run. All right. The door is shut. The door has effectively shut. There was a 3-point game with Montreal and New York, 2 teams ahead of you on Thursday night. It's like the worst-case scenario if you're trying to have that kind of playoff run. It's not going to happen. So they're not going to make it. It's going to be the first time since 2016 they haven't made it. Barring something crazy like they rattle off 10 of 12 to finish the year. But, again, what gives you reason to think they can and will do that? They're not going to make the playoffs for the first time since 2016, it's looking like. And so what do you do between now and game 82, right? Like, do they have the ability to flip that switch and go, you know what? No more Patrick Brown or Vinny Lettieri, or maybe they play, but maybe we throw in a Fabian Lysell. Maybe we throw in a John Farinacci. Like, some of these younger guys, they're going to have to pivot towards coaching like a rebuilder, right? And using these final 12 games as found money, right? And that's the challenge here, right? Is that you are never, if the Bruins want to do things the way they want to do things, which is they've said they want to be competitive next year, they want to be right back in the mix next year. Okay, well, if that's the case, you are never going to get another 12 basically free NHL games to use on younger players, right? And so this is the discovery process for them. Maybe, I mentioned you throw in a Farinacci or a Lysell. You want to call up a Riley Duran or a Trevor Kuntar, get a look at them, go for it. But this is also where you can find out, like, okay, can you put Marat Hutsnadinov up with Pasternak and Zacha? You want to try that? You want to see if you have something there? That can be an option. But you're in a discovery mode here, I would say, the final 12 games, and you have to coach accordingly. You have to deploy accordingly. I think that's going to be the challenge now, because the idea of going on a run, I think, is officially over. I think it's dead and buried. The Bruins are actually, this is wild. You're not going to believe this. The Bruins are actually 1 point away from being closer to Buffalo in the basement of the Eastern Conference than they are the first wild card in the Eastern Conference. That's how bad things have gotten for this team over the last 19, 20 games. And so it's been ugly. But within that, you can find something, for your future. You can find something out about your future. So you got to start playing those kids. You got to start deploying them, giving them more ice time, and figuring out what you have here. And this is going to be the challenge here. Like when we were talking with Don Sweeney leading up to the deadline and at the deadline, we talked about integrating more of these younger players, right? And okay, you sold, so are you going to do that? And Sweeney said, well, we could, we might, but the problem is that, Providence is good, and we don't want to take away from those guys playing on a good team down in Providence and getting some experience on a deep playoff run. And it's like, oh, okay, that tracks. And then you go, hey, wait a minute. Providence's captain, Patrick Brown, is currently on your NHL roster. Providence's leading scorer at the time, Vinny Lettieri, is currently on your NHL roster. It's like, I don't know if you care about Providence as much as you're leading me to believe. So anyways, so that's going to be the challenge here for this team now is they got to weigh these next 12 games. What's the value in them? Is it playing younger players? Is it, playing guys that are tweeners, so to speak, and will help your draft positioning in theory because they have natural limitations? But basically, right now, where the Bruins are, this is a really weird spot, but I can't sit here and complain about it too much because this is what I wanted. They picked a direction. That direction is pain. It's pain right now. It's short-term pain for long-term gains. That's their idea. And so if you got that, it's about maximizing that, right? It's about, hey, I'll deal with this team, being ass and being bad, but you got to show me it's worth it, right? You got to get the best draft position possible and or give me a look at some younger players that could vie for opportunities a year from now. They could be your third line right wing or your fourth line center, whatever the case may be. I want to see some younger players, some new players. I want to see where they fit into the mix. And I want to see if you do have any guys that do fit in the mix here for the Bruins between now and the start of next season, because it's clear they're not going to make the playoffs. Again, barring something that we just can't project. The door has closed. And so now, how do you use these next, what is it, 700 minutes of hockey, basically? How do you use that to your advantage? What do you do to make it count and make your fans go, all right, got something here? Can you do that? That's going to be the challenge here. And we'll talk a lot about the future of this team and who's making the calls and whatnot and what they can and maybe can't do this offseason. But I think that, right now, there's no reason to believe it's not Don and Cam making the calls on this team, right? And so if that's the case, all right, they got part of the future. So let's see what they do there. 617-779-0985 here today on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show. I'm asking you guys, what do you want to see over these final 12 games of the season? Not a ton to play for standing-wise, but what do you want to see? Who do you want to see? Any combos you want to see? And what is the direction of this team moving forward? That's something that I asked Don Sweeney after the deadline. I said, what do you want the identity of this team to be? Because right now it's kind of a hodgepodge of different talents and skill sets. And, he said, we want to be good defensively and be able to win games offensively. Okay, well, they definitely can't do the latter right now. Third game in a row, by the way, under 20 shots. First time in team history since the league began tracking shots in 1959-60 that they've had 3 games in a row under 20 shots. And so right now the Bruins are setting records and matching trends and whatever that they haven't in a long time, it feels like. And so that's going to be a big problem for this team